Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk about some important water issues and how you too can become an urban water steward. My name is Bree Marmur and I am a PhD student in environmental science here at Iowa State University. When I'm not out adventuring around Iowa with my dog, who's named Doc, I spend my time researching urban water issues and how small-scale stormwater best management practices, which we'll talk about more in a bit, can help to reduce some of the negative impacts that our cities have on the environment. I grew up here in Iowa City, so go Hawks. Now I live in Ames, so go Cyclones. And I conduct my research in Cedar Falls, so go Panthers. You can definitely say that I'm an Iowan through and through. I also happen to be a master gardener myself, so these issues are very near and dear to my heart in many, many ways. Today we'll be investigating some of the ways that our cities negatively impact lakes and streams, and then we'll talk about some ways that cities and homeowners alike can help to manage stormwater in an effort to improve water quality and reduce flooding issues. Before we dive in, I want to share some really great online resources. Everything that I'm going to be talking about today can be found on any of these websites. We have the Iowa DNR, the Iowa Stormwater Education Program's website, or the US EPA. And I highly encourage you to visit all of these sites to learn more about these important issues. For the first time in human history, the majority of people now live in cities. Even in Iowa, what many people think of as a rural state, 60% of our population lives in urban areas. And those urban areas generate a lot of stormwater. Hard surfaces like roads and rooftops can generate up to 5 times more runoff than woods or a prairie area of the same size. But let's forget about cities for a moment. Let's step back and talk about the hydrologic cycle. This global water cycle moves water around the planet. As it evaporates into the atmosphere, falls as precipitation, soaks into the soil, or flows over the surface. A key component of this cycle is the infiltration of stormwater, or snowmelt, into the soil. This infiltration provides water for plants and vegetation, recharges underground water supplies, and prevents excess runoff at the surface, which can lead to erosion or flooding. If we look at an area of natural vegetation and think about all of the rain that falls on the surface, of that, 40% is usually just evaporated or transpired, released through plant leaves, back into the atmosphere. 25% ends up shallowly infiltrated, and 25% is deeply infiltrated. Of all the rain that falls, only about 10% usually ends up as any sort of surface runoff. But if we now think of a city landscape, we see a very different picture play out. Of all the rain that falls on a city surface, 30% does still end up evaporated or transpired, but only 10% is shallowly infiltrated, and only 5% ends up deeply infiltrated. That leaves a whopping 55% of all the rain that falls on a city to end up as runoff over the surface. And this isn't just a problem for big cities. Even small towns can see a large increase in the amount of runoff that occurs with storm events. Cities and towns of all sizes disrupt the water cycle to some degree. And that disruption to the water cycle is due to impervious surfaces. So these are any of the hard surfaces that don't allow water to soak into the soil. These can be the obvious things you might expect, like roads and parking lots, rooftops and driveways. But they can also, to some degree, include urban turf-grass lawns, because urban soils can become so compacted through the development of a site that water can barely soak into the soil, even after grass is established. As cities grow and expand, they replace more and more vegetation with impervious surfaces, leaving little way for rain to soak into the soil. The graphs on the right show how dramatically impervious surface area has expanded in 4 Iowa cities from 1940 to 2010, and these trends are only increasing. We've now talked about how cities disrupt the water cycle through the spread of impervious surfaces. Now we need to turn our attention to what stormwater actually is and why it's a problem. Stormwater is any water that runs off over the surface of the ground, either from rain or snowmelt. And that last part is very important because we tend to only think about stormwater as something that occurs in the warm season when it rains. But there's actually stormwater year-round, as accumulated snow and ice melts and thaws. You're probably all familiar with how that beautiful fresh coating of winter snow slowly turns black and dirty along roadsides and parking lots. And if you add in all the salt that's needed to keep roads safe for traffic, there's a lot of gunk that ends up washing into our streams and lakes in the winter when that snow starts to melt. To understand why stormwater has such a negative impact on our streams and lakes, we have to learn a little bit about how storm sewers work. In the United States, we have 2 main types of storm sewers. We have combined sewer overflows, and we have separate storm sewer systems. Combined sewer overflows tend to only be found in older cities because they harbor a little dirty secret. In these systems, both the sanitary sewer, which carries the raw sewage and wastes from residential, commercial, and industrial areas, are connected directly to the storm sewers. And both of these route to the local wastewater treatment plant. That's great when it's dry out because then everything gets treated. But the dirty little secret comes in when it rains and the wastewater treatment plant gets overwhelmed by all of that extra runoff and cannot process everything, and so they overflow, hence the combined sewer overflow name, into the local water body. As this can result in raw sewage being dumped directly into local streams and lakes, this is obviously not a good system and presents a human health hazard. So cities are actively trying to move away from this, and newer cities were built with separate storm sewer systems. So you have the sanitary sewer that goes straight to the water treatment plant, and you have a separate storm sewer which discharges directly to lakes and streams. Great for keeping raw sewage out of the water when it rains, but this now does mean that stormwater is in no way, shape, or form treated before it is discharged. These 2 maps show what types of storm sewers some of the bigger cities in Iowa have. You can see from the image on the left that there are still some combined sewer overflows here in Iowa, but this map will be continually changing as more and more cities across Iowa and the U.S. are trying to move away from combined sewer overflows to reduce the human health risk of sewage in our streams. So more and more cities are adopting separate storm sewer systems, as the image on the right shows. But these come with another consideration that we have to take care of our stormwater runoff because it is not treated in any way, shape, or form before it is discharged to our local streams, which is why it's incredibly important to care about if it's on the ground, because if it's on the ground, it's in our water. And whatever goes in our storm drains ends up in our streams. There are a lot of reasons to care about water pollution, especially if you're someone who really enjoys spending time on our waters. Whether you enjoy boating or kayaking, maybe you live on a lake or stream, maybe you just love how pretty water can be. But even if you don't personally spend a lot of time on our waters, there's still a lot of reasons why you should care about water pollution too. High levels of pollutants have been known to cause fish kills and harmful algal blooms. Fishtails can be a nuisance, and can cause bad smell, and can cost a lot of money to clean up. And harmful algal blooms can be very dangerous to human health. And here in central Iowa, the Des Moines Water Works in late summer will often not be able to use their main water supply, the Des Moines River, because of blue-green algae blooms in the lake producing too many toxins that they can't process out. When we don't regulate what gets dumped into our streams and rivers, we can end up with rivers that literally catch on fire. The Cuyahoga River in Ohio was once so polluted it repeatedly caught on fire. The last great fire was in 1969 and was one of the big motivators for the American environmental movement and inspiration for the first Earth Day in 1970. Our rivers are also our lifeblood. Many cities throughout Iowa and the United States get their drinking water from surface rivers and lakes. And the more polluted the water is, the more money it costs to treat and purify it. We also eat the products of our waters, whether you catch the fish yourself or purchase it from the supermarket. We need to keep pollutants out of our water to keep them out of our fish. We're actually very fortunate here in Iowa. This infographic on the right is a little dramatic. Most all of the fish you would catch in Iowa's lakes and streams is perfectly safe to eat. But that's not the case in all parts of the country and world. And we need to do our part to protect Iowa's waters to ensure that we continue to have access to safe fisheries for years to come. Okay, time for a little activity. I'm going to go ahead and pause here for a moment, and I would like you to think about this question. Think about your own home. And this works no matter if you live in an urban area or a rural area. But go ahead and see if you can identify some things around your home that may contribute to water pollution. This may be physical things or parts of the landscape or maybe some lawn care practices that you engage in. But think of anything that might contribute to water pollution. And I'll catch back up with you here in a minute. I hope you are able to identify some possible sources of water pollution around your home. Maybe some of the things you thought of might even have surprised you a little bit. A lot of the pollutants we're going to talk about are a result of normal everyday life. It's just important that we take steps to manage them so that they don't make it into our water sources. So let's talk about cars. A lot of people will think about air pollution when they think about cars, and that's absolutely correct. Cars are a major source of air pollution, but they're also a source of water pollution. Have you ever seen worn out brake pads? You see that they physically wear away as they're used. Where do you imagine all of that brake dust goes? Ends up on our roads and parking lots and driveways, and next time it rains, gets washed into our streams. Leaks of oil, gas, or other car fluids also get picked up with that runoff, which is why it's really important to immediately clean these up and repair any leaks to keep these harmful substances out of our water. And lastly, washing your car in a driveway, while seemingly a water-saving option, actually isn't that good for the environment because all of that soapy water flows right into our storm drains. In this way, commercial car washes are actually better because they're connected to the sanitary sewer that goes to the wastewater treatment plant. So they're actually better than washing your car on your driveway. You can pull your car onto your lawn and go really easy on the soap if you really do want to wash your car at home. Some common sources of water pollution are more difficult to control. The materials we build our man-made world out of do break down as they age and can end up polluting our water. It's important to repair or replace broken down and worn out building materials to keep the worst of that deterioration out of our water. You can direct your downspouts onto your lawn, which not only helps more rainwater soak in, but can also help trap and filter out any pollutants that might wash off your roof. Which leads us to our next source, dumping in storm drains. I cannot say this enough, and I'm sure you figured it out by this point in the presentation, but nothing should go down storm drains but stormwater. This means that we should never be using storm drains as a dumping ground for household chemicals, lawn chemicals, chlorinated pool water, paint, soapy water. Nothing goes down the storm drain but stormwater. That includes dog poo. We hear about it all the time about how important it is to pick up after our pets out on walks or at the park. Nobody wants to step in it. But we talk less about how important it is to always pick up after our furry friends, even in our own backyard. Pet waste is a huge source of bacteria that can be very harmful to human health, and even in your backyard, it can get in our runoff and pollute our drinking water. Lawn care is also a major source of urban water pollution. Many of us love a lush green lawn, and that's perfectly fine. We just need to be sure that we achieve it in a way that is safe for the environment. Over-applying lawn fertilizer, or misapplying it, such as right before a rainstorm, can cause all of that excess nutrients to leach into the stormwater. We also want to be sure to use a phosphorus-free fertilizer, as excess phosphorus is a leading cause of harmful algal blooms. Grass clippings also need to be kept out of storm drains, as they can clog up the drains, but they also carry with them a lot of excess nutrients and chemicals from our lawn care practices that we do not want in our water. We've now spent the last 17 odd minutes taking a pretty bleak look at the effects that cities have on the water cycle and on some of the many sources of urban water pollution. But the story is not all doom and gloom, I promise. We're now going to turn our attention to how to fix these problems, to look at some ways that cities and urban residents alike can help to protect our water resources. We talked about how cities impact the water cycle, how all those impervious surfaces prevent rain from soaking into the soil, and how we have a lot of excess runoff in urban areas as a result. To fix these urban water issues, we need to try to reconnect the water cycle in cities. And we can do that through practices called green infrastructure, or stormwater best management practices. We need to find ways to use plants and trees to soak up stormwater, to spread it out and slow it down, to connect it back to the soil so that it can soak into the ground instead of running off over the surface. Green infrastructure and stormwater best management practices, also known as BMPs, can be big things that cities do on large areas of land, such as dry ponds and constructed wetlands. And these are great for storing and treating large amounts of runoff. Wetlands have been called Mother Nature's water treatment plant because they do such an amazing job of filtering out pollutants. But green infrastructure and stormwater BMPs can also be smaller, engineered practices. Instead of having the runoff from a street drain directly into storm drains, we can reroute it first through bioretention cells. Practices that spread out the water, use vegetation to soak it up and filter out pollutants, and slow it down before only then letting it drain into storm drains. Cities can use all of these practices and many more to try to achieve a more natural water cycle. There's a lot you can do on your own property as well. The practices that cities install are great, but they do take up a lot of space. And so we need both cities and private landowners and renters within cities to help manage stormwater. A good rule of thumb for managing stormwater at home is to slow it down, help it to spread out, and let it sink into the ground. You can do this by installing a rain garden, which are designed to trap and infiltrate stormwater runoff from your roof or lawn. You can use rain barrels to collect the rain that falls off of your roof for reuse. You can do a soil quality restoration, which help to replenish some of the organic matter that urban soils are often lacking and help to loosen up that compacted soil so that it can absorb more runoff and leads to a lusher, greener lawn. Next time you do some landscaping, consider native plants, which have deeper root systems to improve infiltration and support biodiversity and pollinators. And lastly, next time your driveway or back patio needs replacing, you can consider using permeable pavers instead of concrete or asphalt. And these pavers not only allow runoff to soak into the ground, but they often look very attractive as well. So let's dive into some of these practices a little more. Rain gardens are particularly well suited for master gardeners because they combine the beauty of flower gardens with good water stewardship. What makes rain gardens different from any flower garden is their construction. Designed to collect runoff from your roof, sidewalks, driveway, or lawn, rain gardens are typically dug down into the ground about 6 to 8 inches to create a depression that allows rainwater to drain to it and temporarily pond before absorbing into the soil. You'll want to plant them with native plants that are both drought resistant but okay with a little water ponding. And these native plants will help to filter out pollutants, support birds, pollinators, and other insects, and don't require the application of additional fertilizer every year. Rain gardens do need to be carefully designed so that they properly pond water and don't cause damage to nearby structures. You'll want to choose a location that is on a gentle downslope and is at least 10 feet away from buildings. Always be sure to call Iowa One Call 811 before digging to check for buried utility lines. When determining the size of your rain garden, you need to consider how large the area that drains to it is, how deep you will make the rain garden, and size it according to the infiltration rate of your soil. You'll also then fill the soil with different layers of soil, sand, gravel to help that infiltration. You can find answers and those equations for all of those design considerations in either of these two great resources. The Iowa Rain Garden Manual and resources found on ISU's Extension Store provide a lot of great information on how to locate, design, build, and maintain your new rain garden. There are many contractors around the state who have experience in designing and constructing rain gardens, but these are also projects that you can do yourself at home on a weekend or over the course of a couple days. So next time you redo a flower bed or decide to update your home's landscaping, consider installing a stormwater-friendly rain garden that will be beautiful and help protect our water. Rain barrels are another great friend of the master gardener. Did you know that rainwater is often better for plants than city water? Rainwater doesn't have any added chlorine like city water does, and it has a pH much more suited to flowering plants. A rain barrel captures the runoff that runs off of your roof for later reuse. Even a small amount of rain will fill an average-sized rain barrel pretty easily, providing plenty of water for your lawn and your garden. If you have a large garden or lawn and require a lot of water, you can easily connect multiple rain barrels together to capture even more. To prevent any issues with algae or mosquitoes, you want to be sure that your rain barrel is completely opaque and doesn't allow any sunlight to shine through. Additionally, a few drops of dish soap on the water surface inside your rain barrel will keep mosquitoes at bay. At the end of every warm season, you'll want to be sure to fully drain and store your rain barrel because any water left in the barrel over winter may freeze and burst them. Rain barrels are something that's pretty easy to do yourself at home, or there are many kits available online or at your local hardware store that can be pretty inexpensive and easy to set up in a weekend. Soil quality restoration is another great way to manage a lot of storm water while at the same time restoring the health and beauty of your lawn. These restorations are a two-step process. You first want to aerate the lawn to help open up those pores and create some more open space to reduce the compaction that we so often see in urban soils. And then you want to apply a thin layer of compost over the top of that aeration to help improve the organic matter content of your lawn. You want to apply the compost just a few inches thick. You still want to be able to see the lawn poking through. You do not want to kill the lawn by applying too much compost, but you want to apply a good healthy layer to really help improve that organic matter. All of this will help create a greener, lusher lawn that greens up earlier in the spring, stays greener later in the fall, and is much more resistant to drought than your traditional urban lawn. This is something that you can DIY. Will involve many wheelbarrows of compost, wheeling around your yard and raking it out so it's an even thickness over your lawn. Or else there are contractors that you can hire that have special hoses that spray the compost out over your lawn. Either way, two great options to restore the health and infiltrative capacities of your lawn. Permeable pavers are another really great stormwater BMP option to consider at your home. These not only look very beautiful, but they reduce the impervious surface area of your home significantly because they take out the entire driveway area, and instead that is now an area where stormwater can soak in, also effectively treats some of the runoff from your roof. These bigger practices do need to be carefully designed and engineered because they often have many sublayers and an under drain to take away some of the excess runoff if you have a really big rainstorm. And so usually you need a contractor to install these, but they can improve your property value of your home because they are so aesthetically pleasing. A smaller DIY option to use pavers yourself when you redo a back patio or some of your sidewalks. These are smaller practices and smaller surface area do not require an under drain, but do a great job of allowing that stormwater to soak in and reconnect with the soil. And they can be, again, very aesthetically pleasing. As master gardeners, I'm sure you've learned a lot about the benefits of using native plants around your home and in our landscape, how they benefit pollinators and birds and insects, and they also have a lot of benefit for stormwater as well. Those deep roots can really help to open up the soil and improve infiltration rates, and they also help to trap and filter out pollutants. So you can use native plantings when you redo some of the landscaping around your home. And you can consider converting your turfgrass lawn to a native turf. Traditional turf grasses have very shallow root systems, need a lot of mowing, a lot of care, and tend to be very sensitive to drought conditions, going dormant and brown very easily during dry conditions. Switching to a native turf lawn is much more beneficial for our local environment because these are native species that were here pre-development. They have deeper root systems, which will help to reduce that compaction and improve infiltration. They're also, being native to our climate, are much more resistant to drought, and so they tend to stay greener longer. There are some downsides to this different type of turf grass. They do tend to need to be kept a little longer than traditional turf grass mixes, so you'll only want to install them in areas that can be a little shaggier. Benefit to that is you don't have to mow nearly as much. These native turf grasses also don't require nearly as much fertilizer, if any addition, as compared to our traditional turf grasses we see in urban areas. You can find out more about all of these practices and many more from these very useful Rainscaping Iowa brochures produced by the Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership. And you can find all of these brochures in digital form at the link below. And they have lots of really great information on how to implement these practices, how to maintain them, and where to learn more. I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar how important it is that we have both cities and urban residents partnering to manage stormwater, that everybody needs to be involved in this. And cities do recognize this. Cities throughout the state of Iowa and across the country want to help you install these practices on your own property. So there's a lot of loans and even rebate programs available to help you pay for these practices, to help you get the loans to pay for these practices. Many cities' rain barrels, you can get up to $75 or $100 off the cost of a rain barrel. And sometimes that's pretty close to what they cost. You can get them for less than that. You can get cost shares on your soil quality restoration or your rain garden. There's a lot of really great programs out there. So check with your local city and see if they offer any of these cost share rebate or loan programs to help you install one of these practices. And then, of course, we're master gardeners. So volunteer, help educate other people about these issues, help clean up trash around your neighborhood, because now we all know that if it's on the ground, it's in our water. So organize trash cleanup days. Help to install a rain garden around somebody else's property or maybe a commercial business. These don't have to just be in residential areas. They're great in parks too. Host a demonstration at a local fair or farmer's market to help educate the general public about these issues or about the benefits of a rain garden. Plant a tree. Didn't talk about that extensively, but trees do a lot for stormwater as well. Anything with vegetation is great, so go out and plant a tree along with your stormwater education campaign. Then you can develop a whole project focused around stormwater. As master gardeners, we tend to think about plants and vegetation for our projects, but plants and vegetation and stormwater go hand in hand. So you can develop a comprehensive project that involves both. And these here show two examples. On the left, we have a group of master gardeners who got together and created a prototype rain garden at a business that they then used as an educational opportunity for the community. And on the right, we have a couple of master gardeners who run a blog about stormwater BMPs on their local extension website. So there's a lot of ways that you can create a whole project and a mission related to stormwater management and master gardener program. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention today. I hope you learned a lot about urban water quality and the ways that our cities can negatively impact our environment, but how we can combat that by becoming urban water stewards. Hope you've learned ways that you can lead by example and thought of some great BMPs that you might now try to install around your own property. Hope you will go forth and talk to your neighbors in your community and help educate everyone about these really important issues and how we can all do our part. And think about ways that you can turn what you've now learned about urban water issues into a master gardener project, something that you can do in your local community to help educate people and help to manage stormwater to preserve our resources so that all of our children can go running happily through our beautiful lakes and streams. Thank you.